I walked in on my alien maid from behind. Unexpected reaction, Jake. Carter had been living on the orbital station above Earth for 6 months now, and the loneliness was starting to get to him as a contracted engineer for the Deep Space Mining Corporation. He spent most days fixing broken equipment in zero gravity, and most nights staring at the metal walls of his small quarters. The company had recently started a new program where they hired alien staff from newly contacted species to work in human facilities as part of the Cultural Exchange Initiative. And that was how Zara ended up as his assigned living quarters. Attendant Zara was from a species called the Velrin, a race of tall, slender beings with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer. Under artificial lights, her eyes were large and dark like polished obsidian, and her movements were graceful in a way that seemed almost liquid. She wore the standard station uniform, but somehow it looked different on her. More elegant Jake had been warned during orientation that Velrin were extremely private about their personal space, and that humans should always announce themselves before entering a room where a Velrin was working. But after 6 months of routine, Jake had gotten careless. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and Jake had finished his shift early for once. He palmed open the door to his quarters, expecting them to be empty since Zara usually cleaned in the mornings. But there she was standing at his desk with her back to him doing something he could not quite see. For a moment, Jake just stood there frozen in the doorway, watching her long fingers move across the surface of his desk, arranging something with careful precision. Her posture was different than he had ever seen it before, more relaxed, as if she thought she was alone. Then, without thinking, he stepped forward and the door hissed shut behind him. Zara spun around so fast it was almost a blur, and Jake found himself staring into those dark eyes, now wide with something he could not identify. Her hands had moved to her chest, clutching something small and glowing. Jake opened his mouth to apologize, but before he could speak, Zara did something completely unexpected. She laughed. It was not a human laugh exactly, but something close enough that Jake recognized it as amusement. Her shoulders shook and a sound like wind chimes came from her throat. Soft and musical. "I am sorry," she said in her accented English. Still holding the glowing object, "I did not expect you back so early." Jake blinked, confused by her reaction. He had expected anger or maybe fear based on what the orientation had said about Velrin and personal space. But laughter was not on the list. "No, I am sorry," he said quickly. "I should have announced myself before coming in. I forgot you might still be here." Zara tilted her head in that particular way she had that made her look like she was examining him under a microscope. "You humans? And your apologies?" she said, with what might have been fondness. In her voice, "You say sorry for everything, even for entering your own living space." She held up the glowing object, and Jake could now see. It was some kind of small orb that pulsed with soft blue light. "I was just finishing something for you," she explained. "A gift of sorts." Jake stepped closer. Curious, a gift. Zara nodded and placed the orb on his desk, where it continued to pulse gently. "Among my people. When we work in someone's living space for an extended time, we create what you might call a harmony stone. It absorbs the emotional resonance of the space and helps balance it. Humans call it mood lighting, I think. But it is more than that." Jake stared at the orb, then back at Zara. "I do not understand. Why would you do that for me?" "Because your quarters felt heavy," she said simply. "Too much loneliness, too much silence. I could feel it every time I came to clean. And among Velrin, we do not ignore such things even when working for other species." Something in Jake's chest tightened in a way that was not entirely comfortable. He had not realized how obvious his isolation had been, or that anyone would notice, much less care enough to do something about it. The orientation said, "Your people value privacy. Above almost everything else," he said carefully, "that you do not like to be disturbed or surprised." Zara made that chiming laugh sound again. "Humans always get that wrong," she said. "We value intentional interaction. We do not like our space invaded without permission." "Yes, but that is different from not wanting connection. Your people assume privacy means isolation. But for Velrin, privacy means choosing when and how to be vulnerable." She gestured to the orb. "You walked in without warning and found me doing something personal, but I was doing it for you, so there is no violation. Only surprise, and surprise can be pleasant when the intention behind it is not harmful." Jake felt something shift in his understanding, not just of Zara, but of the entire 6 months he had spent on this station assuming he was alone. "You have been working here for 3 months," he said. "Why give me this now?" Zara's expression became something softer, more open, "Because I finally understood what you needed." She said, "Humans are complicated. Your emotions layer on top of each other in ways that are difficult to read. It took me time to understand that your loneliness was not because you wanted to be alone, but because you did not know how to stop being alone." She moved toward the door, but paused before leaving. "Tomorrow, when I come to clean," she said, "announce yourself if you wish or do not. Either way, I will not be startled again now that I know your patterns." After she left, Jake sat on his bed staring at the Harmony Stone as it pulsed in the dim light of his quarters. The station suddenly felt less empty, the walls less confining. He picked up his communicator and scrolled through the station directory, finding the name he was looking for and composing a message. "Hey, do you want to get food at the commissary tomorrow? And maybe you could tell me more about Velran culture. I realize I do not know much." The response came back almost immediately from Zara. "I would like that very much. Human food is strange, but I am willing to try again if you promise not to make me eat anything called a hot dog." Jake laughed, and it felt good to laugh in his quarters for the first time in months. "Deal." He typed back. The Harmony Stone pulsed a little brighter, and Jake wondered if it was his imagination or if it really was responding to the change in the room's emotional resonance. Either way, he was not feeling quite so alone anymore, and that was enough.